This is Matt for Into Boxing. We're here again with Johnny Nelson. Johnny, seen you quite a few times the past few weeks. How are you getting on? Doing all right?
I'm like a bad smell. You just can't get rid of me. I'm all right, thank you. I'm all right. Scotland's it's interesting. It's interesting. I've been keeping a low profile this week, but now we're kicking it on again. So Taylor Catterall, good fight. Good fighters.
Amazing fight. And we're talking about a guy in Josh Taylor who in 18 fights has cleaned the division out and he's undisputed champion of the world. Before we get on to the fight with Jack, I want to ask you, in terms of Josh Taylor, do you think he's a bit underappreciated in terms of what he's done? Because he's a superstar, isn't he?
Yeah, for what he's achieved for a UK fighter, you can only compare him to Canelo for what he's achieved, which is mad for his achievements, and you can't argue with that.
Under 25.
Yeah, and so he's boss of the division, and I can see him stepping up. So when he steps up, there are some big fights there for him. I'll be looking at Walter. There'll be some good fights for him, and I think he could make an impression there. I've seen this guy come through. He's angry. He's spiteful.
We like that though, don't we?
Yeah, that's what. But maybe that's to his detriment because people seem to struggle with actually warming to him. But he doesn't care. He wants to fight. He just wants to fight.
He said yesterday, he goes, "Who in the world wants to be famous?" He says, "I don't." Because I asked him I think someone asked him about the Sports Personality of the Year awards and how he didn't get considered for it. And he goes, "I'm not bothered," he says, "but it's a bit disrespectful considering what I've done." And in under 20 fights. But when you look at it, this year with Sky Sports behind him, could this be the year he makes that crossover into the general public?
I think that crossover will be when he steps up a division and gets in with the big names. Yeah. And there's some big names for him to get in the mix there. And so that's what you've got to think about. So, and really, when the world actually sit up and pay attention to him, they realise the accolades he's achieved up to this point in his career and think, oh my God, this guy's a dog. And the thing is, he's still fresh enough. He's still got that fight in him to still make a dent.
Yeah. Now, yesterday when someone mentioned the weight, he was almost like, look, everyone keeps asking me this. He says, I could make this weight, he goes, forever. Because he's physically, when I look at him now, I'm like, you're never 140 in a million years. He looks huge. But he says, no, I've got good genes. I could honestly make this weight for the rest of my career. But the fights are at 147. I mean, we had Terence Crawford here. I thought Terence might have stayed to have a look at him this week. What do you make of that matchup when you look at him stepping up to the 147 division, the bigger fighters? Do you think he'll be naturally into that weight and it'll be absolutely fine for him because of his size?
He'll be walking around at least 160 in between fights. Yeah. So for 147 for him, it would actually not be a biggest feat that you actually expect. But that's when everybody will know who he is. That's when everybody will think, oh my goodness. That's when everybody will look at what he's done as an amateur as well as a professional, look at the people he's beaten, look at all the success he's had, and they'll actually warm into it. They'll actually warm into his spite. Yeah. And that's when he becomes a superstar, when he fights your Crawfords, when they give him a chance. Say, yeah, come on, step up here. At the moment, it's easy to ignore him. Until he actually says, right, that's it, I'm stepping up.
Do you think, how do you see that fight going? Say if he moves up after this fight straight away and goes, look, I want the big boys, I want the Spence, Crawford, Ugas, whoever it is. If you put him in the ring now with Crawford, everyone obviously said Crawford's rated pound for pound 1 or 2, but is that a fight where you go, you know what, it's a good match-up and you fancy his chances?
I always fancy his chances against anybody, but he can't prove himself until he's actually got up there and had a mix in the division, because Crawford's the dogs. He's the bomb, and so you can't all of a sudden say, Taylor's going to step up there and give you guys a run. He will give him a run for the money, but you just want to see how he can perform at that level. And so the proof is in the pudding. So you've got to be patient, don't rush it through.
Let's get on to Jack Catterall, because I think he's played a blinder from the gloves are off to now. So calm. He's not gone from above a certain level all week. Even yesterday when Josh sort of had a bit of a niggle in the press conference where he sort of said, you couldn't punch my phone number in you. He's kept on that level and he looks so focused. Apart, not the boxing world, but are people outside sleeping on Jack Catterall for this fight? Do they think this is just a done and dusted? Because he's undefeated, and I know this is a step up in levels, but at some point everybody has to step up to see where they're at.
So Jamie Moore is probably the one that's told him how to handle this. You're not going to beat him at getting in his face. You're not going to beat him at anything else outside the ring, and he's got to convince him what you're going to beat him as what you can do inside the ring. That's what you've got to look at. That's what you've got to work on. So there's no point in trying to pick a fight you ain't going to win in regards to verbals, in regards to how you are. There's no point in being somebody you're not. That's just not who he is. So have we overlooked him? Yeah, we've overlooked him. You look at his successes, you look at how he's gone about it. So this is his chance to say, right, this is who I am, introduce himself to the world. He talks about stepping aside, and he didn't get paid for stepping aside. He steps aside so Taylor could box Ramirez, I think it was. And so that was his choice, and sometimes it's a tactical move, and that's what you do. So for Catterall, the proof is in the pudding. Again, Saturday night will tell us how good he really is, but he's in against the best, the man that's the boss of the division.
I can't wait. I think it's a cracking main event. Like I said, undefeated versus undefeated, Scotland versus England, and plus we're going to get the Hydro rocking again. This is what Josh yesterday was saying. Look, I've done it without fans, done it with a little bit of fans. Boxing's back now, and that Hydro will be bouncing for him, won't it? Yeah,
and of course. And listen, we're coming off a big weekend at Brook Khan, and so it's I feel for Josh because he's thinking, look at what I've achieved. Don't brush him under the carpet. Forget about last weekend. You can't. It was because it was a great story. So now he's got to create his own story. Now he's got to create his own journey. And we're saying this to a man that's unified the belts at this stage in his career. So I think there's such a long path. There's such a long way for him to go. It's such more for him to achieve. And we just don't know it yet. Well, the public don't know it yet. And so he gets in there with the right fights, the right people. This guy could be big.
Can I just ask, just before you go, I know we just touched on this main event, Kell Brook ended how it ended. Amir Khan, we've got 3 weeks to activate a rematch clause. I can't, from outside looking in, think he's going to do that. It looks like he'll sail off into the sunset. For Kell Brook, I mean, I saw flashes of the old Kell Brook in that ring. Kell Brook who'd made weight, looking physically strong, so composed under all the crowd noise, riding the shots well. That Kell Brook to me looks like the Kell Brook. Do you know what I mean?
The one person that seems to have been forgotten in all this, the true power behind the throne, Dominic Ingle.
Dominic Ingle.
And Kell did an amazing job. He did an amazing job because he had an amazing voice in his ear, amazing tactics, how he dealt with the backstage hassle, how he dealt with training camp, how he dealt with the game plan, what to do. And people struggle to give credit where credit's due. I know Dominic, and there's things he did that his dad did, and he might deliver it in a different way, but you've got to give credit, man. You've got to understand and remember, Mike, after all the things he said before the fight, and Dominic was factual, and he said about Mike, you're doing this for the money, and really, was that the case? Because the fight's done. Mike, Terence Crawford, also what Amir Khan was doing in the gym. So all of a sudden, now I'm saying, Mike, if you're a trainer, you knew what this boy could do and couldn't do. Yeah. So you're either trying to bullshit me or you don't know what you're doing. Dominic exposed him all to the max, and great fight, great partnership.
I have to say, Dominic Ingle, credit to him. He put together, a game plan. I think we all sort of knew Kell would look to try and take him out, but he got Kell to that point where he was physically ready. Because against Crawford, like you mentioned to me, I can get you to 147, but you might not be able to tie your shoelaces. He was 149. He was 149, but he was ready to do damage, and he was physically fit, not drained, looked in great condition.
Yeah, he was, and that's what I'm saying. If he does it right, he listens right, and Dominic's in his corner, Kell cannot beat almost anybody. And so it's a case of what Kell does next. I know I'd want him to do.
Do you think retire? Do you want him to retire?
I would prefer him to, because I know that in doing that, if you retire in a good place, in 10 years' time you'll sleep good, man. You'll not be a nightmare.
Like
like myself, like Leonard Lloyd. I remember, fight week, I went out we went for a drink. I was with Ricky Hatton, and he's such a laugh. He's so sharp, so smart. He's on it, but he's still haunted by Pacquiao. He's still haunted by Mayweather, and he's got all the money in the world. And you got to think, was it worth it? Was it worth those 2 fights? Was it worth it? Because it'll haunt you when you're no longer in the game. And I think for Kell, walk away. So it doesn't matter how much you get paid, what they offer you. You're comfortable, financially comfortable. Walk away so you can sleep at night in 10 years' time.
The way I looked at it, I'm sorry to keep you, but the way I looked at it was, what's going to give him an equivalent or better buzz than what he's just done? Because he could fight Conor Benn. It'd be a huge fight, but it'd have to be I would say a catch weight, 149, 150. He could fight a Eubank, but he's taking another risk, and for what? Not a world title. So what's the point?
I'm saying he's clown the mindset. I think the only person that could get him to train the way he trained, perform the way he did, was Amir Khan. because there was too much at stake there, and so that's what you need. You need something that's going to make you get out of bed at a ridiculous time in the morning. You need someone to fight someone that's going to make you want to not want to be selfish from your wife and kids and your family to spend your time out in training camp. I don't think Conor Ben does that for him. I don't think Eubank does that for him. You know, I think it was Amir Khan, and I think he'd struggle to muster up. I could be wrong, but in my head, you know, I think I'd like him to, but you know what? They know better than me. He's hands on.
Absolutely. Look, Johnny Nelson, thanks for giving Into Boxing some more of your time. I appreciate it. Maybe we'll catch up after fight night.
That's it, man.